Christianity introduced a new moral epoch in the course of human history. Its effect was necessarily transforming upon those who came under its sway. Being cosmopolitan in its nature, we have now to study woman as being somewhat disassociated from racial type and national manner, and we shall seek to ascertain how she met and was modified by Christian conditions. These had a larger effect upon her life than upon that of man, for by its nature Christianity gave an opening for the higher possibilities of her being, of which the old religions took little account. In the realm of the spiritual, it, for the first time, assented to her equality with man. That the women of the first Christian century submitted themselves to the influence of that religion in a varying degree, the following pages will abundantly show. And it will be seen that in the many instances where the Christian doctrine was not permitted to dominate the life, the dissimilarity of those women from their prototypes in former heathendom is correspondingly lessened. While it is not possible to treat this subject without illustrating the above-mentioned fact, the authors beg to remind the reader that this is distinctively a historical and not a religious work, though under other circumstances they would be very willingly to state positive views in regard to many questions herein suggested. It is not within the province of this book to defend or refute any religious institution. The aim is solely and impartially to represent the life of the Christian women of the first ages. Though this is a work of collaboration, Mr. Britton is solely responsible for the part of the book treating of the women of the Western Roman Empire, and Mr. Carroll is solely responsible for that discussing the women of the Eastern Roman and Byzantine empires. Differences of personal characteristics based upon dissimilarity of national temperament reveal themselves in these women of Rome and Constantinople. But the Christian principle, through its transforming and elevating influence on the lives of pagan women, gives unity to the volume and presents a type of womanhood far superior to any that had up to this time been produced by the Orient or early Greece or ancient Rome. The study of the early Christian women takes up a phase of the history of women. The study of the early Christian women takes up a phase of the history of woman which is peculiar to itself. It is, in a sense, and to a degree, out of historical sequence. It deals with a subject in which ideas and spiritual forces, rather than the effect of racial development, are brought into view. It presents difficulties all its own for the reason that not only historical facts about which there can be no contention must be mentioned, but also theories of a more or less controversial nature. We shall endeavor, however, as far as is possible, to confine ourselves to the recapitulation of authenticated historical developments, and to a dispassionate portrayal of those feminine characters who participated in and were influenced by the new doctrines of early Christianity. In writing of the women who were the contemporaries and the acquaintances of the founder of Christianity, the difficulty is very greatly enhanced by the fact that everything related to the subject is not only regarded as sacred, but is also enshrined in preconceptions which are held by the majority of people with jealous partiality. Our source of information is almost exclusively the Bible, and to deal with scriptural facts with the same impartiality with which one deals with the narrative of common history is well nigh impossible. There are few persons who are exempt from a prejudicial leaning, either in favor of the supernatural importance of every scriptural detail, or in opposition to those claims which are commonly based upon the gospel history. We hear of the Bible being studied merely as literature, a method most highly advantageous to a fair understanding of its meaning and purport, but possible only to some imaginary educated person unacquainted with the Christian religion and totally unequipped with theological conceptions. That which is true of the Bible as literature is also applicable to the scripture considered as history. Yet we shall endeavor to bear in mind that we are not writing a religious book, and that this is not a treatise on church history. It is ordinary history and must be written in ordinary methods. Consequently, in order to do this subject justice and to treat it rightly, we must endeavor to remove the women mentioned in the Gospels as far as possible from the atmosphere of the supernatural and to see them in ordinary persons of flesh and blood, typifying the times as well as the circumstances to which they belonged. Though they played a part in an event the most renowned and the most important in the world's history, yet they were no more than women. In fact, they were women so commonplace and naturally obscure that they never would have been heard of were it not for the character with whom they were adventitiously connected. A memorial has been preserved, coeval and coextensive with the dissemination of the gospel of the women who anointed Christ, but solely on account of the greatness of the object of her devotion. Our purpose in this chapter is to ascertain what manner of women they were who took a part in the incomparable event of the life of Christ, what their part was in that event, and how it affected their position and their existence. The whole history of the Jewish race and all the circumstances relating thereto abundantly justify the application to the Jews of the term a peculiar people. A branch of the great Semitic division, in many ways they were yet most radically distinguished from every other part of the human family. By many centuries of inspired introspection, they had developed a religion, a racial ideal, and national customs which entirely differentiated them from all other Eastern peoples. The Jew is one of the most remarkable figures in history. First, there is his magnificent contribution to religion and world-modifying influence, so wonderfully disproportionate to his national importance. Then there is the marvelous persistency of his racial continuity. That which set apart the Jews from other nations was mainly their religion. These peculiar people inhabiting at the time of Christ a small tract of country scarcely larger than Massachusetts, deprived of national autonomy, being but a second-class province of the Roman Empire, nevertheless presumed to hold all other races in their contempt as being inferior to themselves. This religious arrogance, manifesting itself in a vastly exaggerated conception of the superiority, both of their origin and of their destiny, surrounded the Jews with an impenetrable barrier of reserve.